One day I saw Hubbard, and I told him, I said, "Hey, I really want to do this again. Your management team doesn't seem to be a big fan of mine. They told me to communicate with them via the mail that I'm a pain in the neck." And he said to me, he looked at me and he goes, first thing he did is he backed up. He goes, "Oh, you're that crazy guy." And then he said, "No, you did a fine job, young man. We might let you do it again sometime." And I wrote him a letter from Jacksonville at the end of that year. On the top, I put his quote, "You did a fine job, young man. We might let you do it again sometime, R.D. Hubbard." And I wrote him this letter. And then his general manager, who never took my call once in his life, Ewell Wyatt, basically called me and said, "Mr. Hubbard said, if you want to make the trip home, we'd love to have you." And that's when I called 4 races, and I got written up by Alan Malamud in the LA Times, and then I was off and running. It's the Hasta La Vista of 2009, closing day Turf Paradise. Luke had passed away, and I replaced him. And basically the purpose of that call was to honor Luke. But I called it in 23 different voices. And at the end of that race, I went from Trevor Denman to Ed Burghardt, because Ed was very close with Luke.
Here's Ed Burghardt as they pass the 8th ball, and Latino Summer has a 2-length lead. Highland Games on the outside is trying to get to him in second, with New Fan down in third. It's Latino Summer on the inside. On the outside, Highland Games. Turf Paradise will never be the same without Luke Kruytbosch. And Highland Games on the outside, pushing on by Highland Games, wins the Hasta La Vista. Latino Summer second, New Fan down third, and Meeting with Destiny was fourth. God bless the soul of Luke Kruytbosch.
And those are the last words I ever used on the microphone at Turf Paradise. And they had asked me in years subsequent if I wanted to call a race. I go, no, I said what I wanted to say on this mic, honoring my buddy.
Yeah.
Because he was a good man. Luke was behind me during some of my toughest moments. And you got to remember people like that. My job is to always honor his legacy, because that's my way of saying, hey, brother, I remember the things you did for me.
Hey, Frank, earlier you mentioned another giant in our game, a guy that you absolutely idolized, and he means a lot to you to this day, Trevor Denman, the longtime voice of Santa Anita Del Mar. He also called one of the greatest races, in my opinion, ever run, the 1989 Preakness.
And here's the race we've been waiting for. Sunday Silence on the outside. Easy Goer at the right, head and head coming to the 8th ball. Sunday Silence and Pat Valenzuela. Easy Goer and Pat Day head and head through the stretch. What a horse race this one is. Easy Goer and Sunday Silence going nose and nose in the Preakness. Sunday Silence, Easy Goer. Here's the finish. Sunday Silence wins it by a nose.
You had Pat Day, Pat Valenzuela, Charlie Whittingham, Shug McGahee, the Phipps family. It was Sunday Silence versus Easy Goer. So Trevor had some great moments nationwide and on national television. You're now the voice of the Belmont.
Let's send it up to track announcer Frank Mirahmadi.
And they're off in the Belmont Stakes. And as expected, Rodriguez bounces out very quickly. Uncaged has plenty of early interest, as does Crudo, who sprints up alongside Rodriguez. Journalism secures the 4th spot. Baiza's a little bit keen. He is in between horses and 4 lengths off the lead. Kentucky Derby winner Sovereignty cruises up along the inside. Journalism makes a decisive move with a 1/4 mile to go, and he takes command of the Belmont Stakes. Sovereignty angles out to try and run him down. It's a rematch of the Kentucky Derby as they come to the 8th ball, and here comes Sovereignty. Sovereignty goes right by Journalism once again, leaving absolutely no doubt who the best 3-year-old in the world is. Sovereignty and Junior Alvarado in the Belmont Stakes. Journalism was second. Baeza finished third.
I know that's a tremendous honor, but you have met that challenge and then some. But I want to talk about Trevor Denman. You told me one time the greatest advice you ever got as an announcer, a prospective announcer, a big-time announcer, came from Trevor. Tell us about it.
Well, Trevor's my idol. I really believe he's the greatest of all time. And look, I grew up on the West Coast, so had I grown up elsewhere, I might feel someone else was. But Trevor changed the game. He changed the way to broadcast races.
Zenyatta's come to the outside. Zenyatta coming flying on the grandstand side. Gio Ponti on the inside. Summerbird is right there. This is unbelievable. Zenyatta, what a performance. One we'll never forget. Saratoga. It looked impossible, but it is Zenyatta, still unbeaten under Mike Smith. Gio Ponti second, Summerbird, and then Richards Kid. What a dramatic performance.
And the reason I call him the greatest of all time is because nobody could read a race like him. And so therefore you might like a different style, but if you want to know where your horse is, Trevor is the man. And so it went from him, and he still remains on this high pedestal for me, Mike, because I just know I say this, and sometimes people say things and it's like they say it to sound good. I rather listen to Trevor call a race than call one myself 30 years into this. That is the truest statement. Only I know it's true, so it doesn't matter if people believe that, because it doesn't matter. I just know how great he is and how much I enjoy listening to him. But he told me basically when I got the job at Santa Anita, I purposely, Mike, when I met him for that first time in 1990, as we mentioned earlier. And I later, when I became an announcer in 96, whenever I visited Santa Anita, I would visit him at the most one time a year, and I would make it for 5 minutes because I knew in the end, he was a guy who liked to keep to himself. I didn't want to come across thinking like, hey, we're now colleagues, because we're never colleagues. You know, he's the teacher and I'm the student. And so I just didn't want to like bother him and impose on him. And he was very kind, but I just kept that to a minimum. But our friendship really, really went to a new level. You know, as I got better at what I did, and I remember what he said to me after the Arkansas Derby that I called with American Pharoah.
There's a new leader at the top of the stretch. It's American Pharoah, putting away Bridget's Big Lovey. Mr. Z moves into second. On the outside, Win the Space and the Truth or Else. There's an eighth of a mile to go, and American Pharoah is putting on a show. He has not been asked the question, but everyone knows the answer. He is indeed the ruler. American Pharoah, breathtaking in a mesmerizing performance as he dominates the Arkansas Derby. Far Right was second. Mr. Z in a battle with Made from Lucky and Bold Conquest. That is one special horse.
He wrote me an unbelievably nice note. And he had told me that he had watched those races because he watched very few simulcasts, but he said he watched me that whole day. And he felt that that day, the way he mentioned it, he said it was a seminal moment. And I looked that up just because I'm not exactly, the most, I'm not your big student over here. So I had to just make sure I got the whole point of seminal and what its impact would have. And it really meant the world to me. And it was a turning point for my career. And anyway, when I eventually got the Santa Anita job, which I know he wanted me to get that job from the beginning, but the way it worked out, I ended up getting it a few years later. But he said to me, he was giving me some advice, and he said, I'm not going to give you advice. I'll give you helpful hints. And he told me something about what I was doing early in races, which helped me dramatically. It's a very subtle thing, and only he would understand it, and he helped me. But the thing he told me is, open your eyes and tell them what you see. It's that simple.
Do it for Andrew, digging in, holds a 2-length lead coming to the furlong pole and just being coaxed along. One Flew South is running a big race, trying to get inside of Forgiving Spirit for a clear shot at the front runner. And on the outside, King Apollo. Here's One Flew South and Kent DeSormo coming for the lead in the final stages. A late run from Thornhouse. One Flew South wins the opener. Photo for second, Thornhouse and King Apollo. Behind them, it was between Forgiving Spirit and Do It for Andrew.
It's that simple. And then he also talked one time about, sometimes you're going to make a mistake or you might call a photo incorrectly. And he said, you can't hide behind apron strings. I love that line. It's only a line that Trevor would come up with. In other words, go out there and give it a shot. You make a mistake, you just got to turn the page and you got to go, because who wants to hear about your boring calls? Like, I live on the edge in my life and in everything. So when I'm calling, I'll make a commitment. And I believe at this point in my career that the fans who are my fans or the audience, they trust me. I'm going to be wrong sometimes. Everyone's wrong. You can't predict everything that's about to happen. But I think that I'm better off just doing what I think, which is my instinct, my gut. It's what I watch. It's what I've done my whole life. And I tell people this, and it sounds a little nutty. I call races as Trevor Denman to this day. And what I mean by that is I try to read the race the way he always read the race. I have a very similar cadence to him. And it's not because I'm trying to copy his every word. I have my own different style. I do things differently. But in the end, the base of the race call is based upon identifying who's traveling well, making sure you let the public know where the favorite is at all times, and then not being biased under any circumstance based on who the favorite is or what it is. Just watch the horses and tell the people what you see. And I think that that's why I have a good fan base, because in the end, ironically, Mike, when I started, I was known as the impersonation guy from the calls at Hollywood Park. And then when I
Yes.
worked on the Northern California Fair Circuit, I always called the last race as some other voice. And I've done maybe 50 different voices of different people, cartoon characters, Snagglepuss, Huckleberry Hound, Jack Buck, Hank Stram. I mean, some ridiculous things I put into race calls. But the funny thing is, now I think I'm one of the most conservative race callers there is. Like, I can't stand when announcers go off on a bunch of tangents. In the end, it's about celebrating the winners and making those people who are involved, whether they bet the horse, own the horse, bred the horse, or rode the horse, make them feel good about their accomplishment. It's all about the winner. Not to Neil Howard, great trainer, who trained for Lane's End for so long and trained some beautiful horses. What he complimented me once about, he said that he likes the fact that I acknowledge when a horse runs a good second or a good third, because those people, they're putting their heart and soul into it. Not everybody can win.
Yes.
So I'll keep that in mind. I think sometimes if someone runs a good second, I'll say a solid second because they earned it. At the same time, if a horse is 0 for 14 and wins their 15th start, I'm not going to say like, oh, finally wins, because when people watch the replay, that's their celebration moment. It's not a reminder that the horse had failed. It's a celebration that the horse succeeded. And it's a fine line, Mike, because sometimes there are horses that are staggering home. You don't want to say it if they hold on, but you got to say it if it's true. So I just try to be respectful at all times, and I pretend that I own every horse. What would I want to hear? And obviously, when you've called tens of thousands of races, you're going to have some that you wish you had back. You'll make a mistake once in a while, call a filly a colt. That's the worst. And I haven't done it many times, but believe me, when I have been very angry with myself because it's sloppy. Let's face it.
Yeah.
You should know what's going on. You got to pay attention.
Yeah. And Frank, a solid second takes me to the next topic, and that is the 2025 Triple Crown. Journalism, a solid second in the Derby, a solid second in the Belmont. He won the Preakness. The Derby winner, Sovereignty, opted to skip the Preakness, and that set up, to me, the most highly anticipated Belmont where a Triple Crown was not at stake that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I've been paying attention to races for a long time now, Frank. But I want to go to that day at Saratoga. You told me, a few weeks ago, it was the most stressful day of your life. We had weather, we had changes, scratches, surface changes, races canceled, the phone's ringing off the hook, and here's Frank Mirahmadi, and they got to hit these post times. They're on national television, and you are under the microscope. You're going to be on Fox Sports over-the-air television. Talk about that day and how you felt walking out of Saratoga Racecourse following the 2025 Belmont, Frank.
Well, I was lucky that we had done it the year before, so at least I was familiar with how things go, because Big Fox, I always say, whenever I talk about Big Fox, I'm talking about World Series Fox and Super Bowl Fox, and I still can't believe that, and I'm glad I didn't even know this. I've never even thought about what the audience is. 5 million people were tuned in for that race, and I'm glad I didn't know that going into it. But in addition to all the things you mentioned, there was an issue that day with a hot microphone in the booth, and it would not go away. And the legend himself, Dave Johnson, texted me and warned me early in the day, and then friends were warning me, and there was just there were some glitches that I didn't want to get into. We have figured them out to make sure it doesn't happen again. But to give you an idea, they're going to the gate. Like, there's a few minutes to post to the Belmont. I'm still getting texts from people. Hey, man, your mic is hot. I can hear you breathing. I can hear you talking the horse names to yourself. I'm like, where is this going out? I don't hear it. Anyway, it was just Henry Williamson, the son of the great Williamson family that you've seen many of their great horses over the years.
Yeah.
I know you're familiar. No one would want to quiz you on that whole outfit of great horses. Anyway, he texted me literally 30 seconds to the race. He said, Frank, I just want you to know I can hear your breathing and you're talking. You're mumbling to yourself. Be careful. And I just thought right then, like, literally the horses are 5 seconds behind the gate. I texted him back. I said, thank you so much. And I said, Crudo's silks look a lot like yours, because I was trying to keep myself calm. Like, when you get worked up, when I looked up and there were 40 minutes to post for this race, and all week I'm thinking about the various scenarios, and I'm not one that scripts calls, but I'm also one that has to understand in broadcasting, you must know the moment. We're on national TV. There's a tremendous extra interest in this race because not only because sovereignty and journalism are hooking up, but because of the dramatic way in which journalism was able to overcome the seemingly impossible to win the Preakness Stakes. So now people are saying, well, it was a sloppy track. He got beat. but he ran a giant race. He was well clear of the rest. Now he came back and showed what a superstar he is. When he looked like he was spinning his wheels, he overcomes that to close 5 lengths in the last 16th of a mile, which it can't happen, and it did. Now we're coming back here for this next round. It's like a heavyweight fight. You think about, the big contenders. Think about Hagler Hearns, you know what I mean? Whatever it may be.
Yeah.
There's so many various combinations you can talk about, but it was that sort of environment. And with the Fox people, even they were talking to me beforehand, some of the producers, they have a dinner, they're smart. They get everyone together, all the producers and the directors and the people that are going to be on the show, and people are just bantering. And I was asked, what do you think about the race? I said, well, there are various scenarios. I think to me, it's important to acknowledge the Kentucky Derby is in there, Kentucky Derby winner, the Preakness winner is in there, and those are important things to note. And then you just got to let it be, but you can't overwhelm yourself with if this happens, then that. You don't want to come with a contrived call, but you got to be prepared. Anyhow, the race comes, and in the end, it's at the end of a very, very long day. Not only a long day, Mike, but a long day of great races. Those days don't even come around without the Belmont, let alone to have the crescendo be the Belmont Stakes. And the race, Mike, turned into exactly, we couldn't have dreamt of a better scenario when they came to mid-stretch. I mean, first of all, let me say this. In my opinion, journalism is not a good horse. He's a great horse. He is a great horse. And great is not something you just throw around there. And when he came out on the track, he has a presence about him too. He's a good-looking horse. He was prepared to perfection, and he came with his A game. And going into the far turn, I mean, he did everything right. Umberto Rispoli had taken a lot of criticism for his ride in the Preakness. I think sometimes bad press is better than no press. I firmly believe in that, because all of a sudden a lot of people never even heard of him now know, who's this Italian guy? Well, he's a very good rider is who he is. Anyway, he gave him a perfect ride in the Belmont, and he made that giant move. It looked like he was home. And when they straightened up at Saratoga, Mike, the booth is very low to the ground. It's what makes it a little bit more challenging. But while making it a little more challenging, it also gives the announcer the perspective of where the announcer has spent a lot of his life, which is in the box seats, because you're very close to the box seats at that point, and you're lower to the ground. And so I get the fun of watching it. And when they turn for home, I got my binoculars looking at the top of the stretch, and journalism's in control. And then all of a sudden, Sovereignty tips out. And I just wish I could let people enjoy the view and the vantage point of seeing his face and seeing his legs when he took off. I knew within a blink of an eye he had to win that. He just can't. To me, the analogy I drew, Mike, it was like a cheetah going after a little kitten.
He pounced like a big cat. Yeah.
He came and got him. And it was a great race. And it was just it was perfect, because in the end, when I mean it was perfect, of course, if you own journalism, it wasn't that perfect, but it was perfect, because journalism lost nothing in defeat, because he beat the rest of them soundly. And hopefully this rivalry will continue, because in the end, we all know by now that as certain as things sometimes look on paper, it's not always the way it's going to unfold. Because in horse racing, for those of you who don't watch horse races every day, 5 lengths, which is the length of a horse, which is a decisive victory or a decisive margin, is 1 second. So a lot of things can happen in a horse race that could cost you 1 second. And so therefore, that's why some of these decisions are so close. And that's why, even though when you look at that Belmont result, you think there's no chance journalism would ever beat Sovereignty again, you just never know. First of all, as Trevor Denman would say, horses aren't machines. Who knows if they feel good? They have a headache. They don't feel like running. They're maybe in tight. Dirt got in their face. You don't know all the things that are going on into a race. And so I just hope that they're going to continue to meet. I know that I know for sure that Sovereignty is planning. I had the privilege the other night. Michael Stidham, a good friend of mine who trains for Godolphin, won a nice race here at Saratoga, and he invited me to the Godolphin. Pardon me?
And they own Sovereignty.
Yeah, they own Sovereignty. Good point.
Yeah.
He had a horse named Think Big. But anyway, I was able to go to this Godolphin house where they had a nice little gathering of their inner circle and hang out for about an hour and a half. It was a lot of fun. And they said they're going to the Jim Dandy to prepare for the Travers. And I'm like, that is awesome news. So it'll be great. Hopefully there'll be more and more battles. I don't know if Team McCarthy has decided what they're going to do with journalism, but they should be very proud of him. And I can't wait to hopefully get a chance, maybe 1, maybe 2 more times this year, to call them. And ideally, they'll get to the Breeders' Cup Classic at Del Mar, and then Michael will have the home field advantage. And maybe there, it'll be what happened in that Sunday Silence Easy Goer matchup, where all of a sudden, when Easy Goer was at home at Belmont, he took care of business. And now on Michael McCarthy's backyard, maybe he'll have a chance to turn the tables then. That's what makes this rivalry so fun. But Mike, you're right. This was a very highly anticipated race, and it lived up to the billing. And it's very rare that type of thing happens.
And Frank, you met the moment under the
Thank you.
most adverse of circumstances. Knowing you as I do, Frank, you're a guy, you're a step ahead. I mean, I don't want to blow smoke, but you just are. You read people, you read races. You've made your living with your wits and everything else. I'm sure as a youth you were a tad incorrigible, but you seem to be, Frank, in a very good place. And we didn't talk about this. I want to give Jennifer props. You just seem like you're in a great place now. You've settled into New York. You got the summer in front of you. Frank Mirahmadi, life is good.
I appreciate you saying that, Mike. It's been a long road. And, when I was in 7th grade, my English teacher, Mr. Markovich, I still remember he would be upset with me and he would call it Mirahmadi mumbles in the back of the classroom. And so, my brother and I weren't the most perfectly behaved individuals. In fact, we ended up, as you and I have laughed about in the past, at a military school when I was in 8th grade and he was in 11th. He loved it. I hated it. My grades did improve. I did get to a 3.6 average. I learned how to do laundry. I learned how to shine shoes. And certainly there were a lot of things to learn there. And but, needless to say, I had to put on my salesman hat in that summer. We were walking our dog Peaches, my dad and I, on Elm Drive. And I gave him a speech of speeches about how it's going to be fine. Don't you dare send me back there. It's high school time. And then I got to go to Beverly Hills High School. So that was, my brother didn't want to, he loved it. He graduated from there, Army Navy Academy in Carlsbad. And, Lafitte Pink Eye, his son, Lafitte III, I was just talking to him in the parking lot the other day. He went to that school and he loved it. So
really,
he loved that school. Absolutely loved it. So, for some, they loved it. For people like me, I prefer to be right at home with my parents. But look, that's an experience. Like I said, I learned how to do laundry then. Whenever I do laundry, I actually think of that place because I can't help about remembering how to iron and be ready for things. And you learn a lot. And there were memories. President Reagan was shot the year that I was there. I still remember that exact moment.
Wow.
I remember the Eagles and the Raiders were playing in the Super Bowl. It's like, I used to go boogie boarding out there. It's right on the ocean. So theoretically, it looks like a fun spot, but to each their own. But yeah, I've been able to get into a place. You mentioned Jennifer. She's a superstar. She has a great job with Naira. And, she's a great colleague and a great employee. She works very hard. She's pretty much a corporate wizard. When I met her, she was with Xerox Business Services, and she's transitioned into a management role with New York, doing a lot of things. And she puts together, among her many duties, she puts together the layouts with all the sponsors for the television shows that are on Fox Sports. That's a big responsibility. You got to clear commercials. You got to make sure that the logos, like, for example, when the show starts, that it says that, today's race is brought to you by Claiborne, that logo is up there and that the commercials run in certain things. And she's very conscientious. I taught her early on about the importance of trying to be in sync with your sponsors. So if there's a great Son of Omaha Beach running, why not run the Spendthrift ad for Omaha Beach near that horse? Because it just fits in. And so things like that. And now she takes it upon herself. I used to show her, and now she looks it up herself and stuff like that. So I'm proud of her because she went from a person who used to buy a Saratoga pass every year for a discounted rate of like $90 to one who's there all the time. And I'll tell you, there are days in which, and it happens for all of us, she wishes she could just be a fan and go out and bring her lawn chair and sit and enjoy the racing action. But she is a superstar. And I told her she's pretty much kept me alive during some big time battles. I met her after I got really sick, stage 3 colon cancer. Thank God I'm clear now, almost 9 years. That's nothing. I would say this as a matter of human element. If you're out there and you're about 45 and you're a male, and I think even if you're a female, whatever it is, you go and you get a colonoscopy. It's not fun to do, but it's very easy to do. And you can avoid some aggravation that you really don't want to ever have to deal with, God forbid. So I always tell people, don't be ignorant, because you just never know. I mean, there's just a lot of, you got to try to stay on the right side of the soil, Mike. We got to try to have some fun.
Frank, you have a lot of it. You're at the top of the game now. Last thing I got to ask you.
Yes, sir.
What does Frank Mirahmadi would like to do on a day off? Just kick it? I mean, you got to decompress a little bit, but I know you're a guy, you like stimulation, you like action. What do you look at when you're not in the announcer's booth and say you and Jen are just alone? What do you want to do?
I really have a very few interests. I always tell people this, and I need to develop some new ones. That's for certain. But, over up here in Saratoga, I think that basically Mondays, they used to run 6 days a week here. How the staff handled that, I have no idea. But I
Right.
will tell you this, in life, they say father time is undefeated. I've gotten a lot older, needless to say. And so Mondays after this, like today, this was a good day to be able to sleep until about 9:30 and just not worry about getting up and going to work. Now, it's not like I'm digging ditches. And it's not like I'm, having some high stress physical labor. And that's why I never complain about my job. I'm basically standing up 10 or 12 times a day calling the race, but it requires a lot more than that because you have visitors and, you got to be up and you got to be ready and you got to be prepared. And it's mental, it's mentally straining 100%. I used to laugh at announcers who said they needed to decompress. Now I understand what they meant because they were
Oh,
older
yeah.
than me back then. But around here, I like to go around and, just explore this area. I do love the East Coast quite a bit. There's just some extra energy out here. I'm a Los Angeles native. In fact, born at Hollywood Presbyterian. I was thinking about this earlier before we came on. If you look in the past performances in the Daily Racing Forum, my first race call would be HOL for Hollywood. So would my birthplace be HOL for Hollywood
How about that?
Presbyterian. But
Yeah.
we like to go. I like to look and explore new areas. I used to see a lot more movies before the whole pandemic. I've been known to get involved in some gaming activities, which anytime I can curtail that, it's a very good thing. I should be nowhere near that. Trying to predict the outcome of what grown men are going to do running up and down a basketball court is nothing I've shown any success with whatsoever. But it's that adrenaline that has always driven me into that kind of stuff. And I find that I get that part of my brain tickled by calling the race to try to be as precise as possible. And to me, I get enormous satisfaction out of my job. I've probably watched this year's Belmont 30 times, which I have no problem saying that. That's an hour of my life that I've spent watching the replay because it just makes me proud. Like a kid from Los Angeles calling the Belmont Stakes, I could have never even dreamt of that. My dream job has always been Santa Anita, and I always felt it was destiny, and you can't fight destiny. And the way it happened was not the way I would have anticipated it. But in 2003, Mike, I was called in to be the Santa Anita track announcer in the movie Seabiscuit. Alan Gutterman, great marketing executive, put my name in the hat there, and they picked me. You could never hear me in the movie, but I'm in the credits. And little would I know, 15 years later, I would get that job. So,
Yeah.
I'm living an amazing opportunity, and I'm aware of how good it is. And I am a pizzaholic. As you can see, I've had a few too many slices in my time, but I do love cheese pizza. And when I'm on the East Coast here, one of the things I'll be doing is exploring some new pizza places around because I love a plain good cheese slice. And they don't have a whole lot of them that are great in Southern California, but they got plenty of them up and down this coast over here. So I actually I don't like to fish. I actually got a card from a guy the other day that rents boats. I said, Jennifer, I'm going to try something different. Let's go out on a boat one of these days and enjoy that. My brother took me fishing once. I have an older brother, not had, but when we were younger, we were living in Westwood, and he took me on some bus that left right off of Hillgard out to the pier. I got so sick in this rocking boat that I have not been anywhere near a boat other than a big boat ever since then. I think I've been on a few casino boats, but my goodness, the memory of that. So I was never into like fishing and doing those kind of things, but around here, it's good to get outdoors, and Jennifer pushes me to do some things that maybe I wouldn't normally.
Yeah. Yeah. You and Dave Portnoy need to hook up for a slice of pizza and evaluate
We talked.
Have you really?
Oh, yeah. Well, he came and visited me at Santa Anita.
Oh,
That would
wow.
have been in 2019. It was actually before I called. It was the undercard of the brief. And you know what it was? I love the guy because I watch all his reviews, and he is an amazing reviewer. He is very accurate. There are only a couple that I disagree with him, and he doesn't want to hear it, but I might tell him. But when he was in the booth at Santa Anita in 2019, I said, "Listen, I'm going to give you a place in New Jersey. I'm telling you, I know what kind of pizza you like, and it's called Federici's. It's in Freehold." He says, "A couple of people have mentioned." I go, "Dave, when you go there, it'll be one of your highest scores." And he gave him over a 9. So he liked that. And my buddy Anthony Valinoti owns a pizza place in Arkansas called DeLuca's, and I really helped him promote his restaurant when he opened because when I was in Oakland from 2012 to 2015, the Oakland announcer is one of the most prominent jobs in the entire state of Arkansas. It's crazy. It doesn't pay what it should for that level of prominence, but the fulfillment that you get inside of it, and they paid me just fine. What I'm saying is, for how big a job that is, you're like a member of the community. Anyway, I helped promote his restaurant, and he's turned into a pizza legend, and Dave gave him an 8.7 a couple years ago. It doubled his business. He's opened another one.
Really?
And one of my passions, yes, one of my passions is to get involved in the pizza business. And I've been working for several years on trying to get one going in Kentucky. And it's something that I'm very close to getting the right people involved to get that thing open. And we're going to call it Frankie DeLuca's. It's taken much longer. We planned on this right after the pandemic, and one thing led to another. But now he always wanted to perfect it, and then he could duplicate it. And it's called DeLuca's. And all the people in racing know it. All the people from FanDuel TV, from Fox, from all the horsemen, the jockeys, they all go there. Everybody knows DeLuca's. But he opened a new one with some partners in Little Rock, and he's going to open some more. And he told me, though, when we go to Kentucky, it's me and him, and we're going to be partners, and we're going to bring some people in and have a good time. And that's something I like, because you're basically blessing people with good food. They're in an environment where they're having a good time. They're eating,
100%.
they're happy. And that's something I've always wanted to do. And that's
great stuff.
That's one of my next big plans.
Great stuff, Frank. Hey, the last thing.
Yes, sir.
If you could, how do you think, Frank, the late Rodney Dangerfield would have described Frank Mirahmadi's circuitous rise to the top of both the Santa Anita Grandstand and the Saratoga Racehorse Grandstand? To me, the most significant voice in racing today. How would Rodney have done this, maybe from the half-mile pole home, Frank?
I'll tell you, this Frank is something else. Are you kidding me? When he was a youngster, he went to Gamblers Anonymous. They gave him 2-1. He couldn't make it. Oh, I'll tell you. Now he's better off. He's in the booth. He can't get to the mutual windows. Are you kidding me? The other day, I went to my doc. I said, Doc, I don't know what to do. I'm depressed. He said, don't worry about it. You're not worth it. Are you kidding? I'll tell you what, this horse racing game is tough. Sometimes I couldn't pick a winner in a match race. Ooh, reminds me of Sharp Cat when she won the walkover. I wonder if I would have picked her on top. I'll tell you, Mike, I appreciate the respect you're showing me, because my wife showed me no respect at all. Neither did my doctor. I went to my doctor, Dr. Vinny Bubat, the other day. I said, Doc, every morning I wake up, it's the same old story. I look outside, the birds are chirping. The sun is shining. I look in the mirror, I brush my teeth, I suddenly get sick to my stomach. I don't know what's wrong with me. He said, neither do I, but your eyesight's perfect.
Frank Mirahmadi, man. That's just awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great summer, and we'll get you on hopefully before the Breeders' Cup in the fall at Del Mar.